الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. وعن أبي مسعود عقبة بن عمرو البدري رضي الله تعالى عنه قال: جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: إني لأتأخر عن صلاة الصبح من أجل فلان مما يطيل بنا، فما رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم غضب في موعظة قط أشد مما غضب يومئذ، فقال: يا أيها الناس إن منكم منفرين، فأيكم أما الناس فليوجز، فإن من ورائه الكبير والصغير وذا الحاجة. متفق عليه. This chapter deals with expressing anger when the sanctified aspects of Shariat, when the hurmat, when their sanctity is not observed, and helping the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This particular hadith, the introduction of it, some time back we discussed quite in detail. Abu Mas'ud Uqbat ibn al-Amr Badri radiyallahu ta'ala narrates that a person came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As to the identity of this individual, we mentioned previously, ulama kiram have mentioned a few names, possibilities: Hazm ibn Ubay ibn Ka'b, Haram bin Milhan, Salman bin Harith. These are names which are mentioned. Exactly who it is not specified, but nevertheless he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he had a complaint. What was the complaint? Inni la ata'akhkharu an salati subhi min ajli fulanin mimma yutilu bina. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I am absenting myself from Fajr Salah with Jamaat. I am absenting myself from Fajr Salah with Jamaat because of the fact that the Imam lengthens the Salah too long. It's important to try and understand or contextualize Shariat and Deen. After Iman, the most important obligation upon us is Salah. And when it comes to Salah, we are not just asked or commanded in Shariat to discharge our Salah, to perform the Salah, but aqimus Salah. Allah Ta'ala commands us in the Quran, establish your Salah. In the tafsir of this, Mufassirin mention that we have to perfect our Salah. We have to beautify the Salah. And how do you perfect, how do you beautify your Salah? For that, the answer is very, very simple. Perform the Salah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Make Salah like you see me, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, making Salah. So we have to fashion and model our Salah on the Salah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now if we look at the Salah of Nabi Pak sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, particularly the issue of the length of the Salah. How long Salah did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam perform? Here it is very, very important for us to put Shariat into perspective. When it comes to A'mal of Deen, if you look in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, one is when that Amal was performed in a collective and congregational form. And the other is when that particular amal was performed individually, or what we call infiradi, where you're performing it on your own. Where salah is performed on your own, your sunnat, your nawafil, your tahajjud, your awabin, your ishraq, etc. Here, without a doubt, we see Nabi Pak sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed very, very long salah. You know the famous incident. Sahabi comes behind Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says that I wanted to see how long was the salah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَافْتَتَحَ الْبَقَرَةِ. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam started reading Surah Baqarah. So he says, I'm thinking, Huzaifa radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says, I'm thinking in my mind that Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, indal mi'a yarka, he'll read 100 verses and then he'll make ruku. Already if you compare this to our tahajjud salah, 100 verses in one rakat. How many verses of the Quran do we read? Nevertheless, he says, I thought Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would make ruku after 100 verses. Thumma madha, Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed the 100 verse mark. So he said that then I thought in my heart, yusalli biha fi rak'atin, after one, he'll read half in this rakat of Surah Baqarah, which is almost 2.5 juz, 2.5 paras of the Quran. He says, I thought he'll read half in this rakat and half in the next rakat. Thumma madha, Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed the halfway mark of Surah Baqarah. Then Huzaifa radiallahu anhu says, I thought in my heart, yarka'u biha. At the end of Surah Baqarah, he'll make ruku. He says, فَقَرَأَهَا, he read the entire Surah Baqarah. فَافْتَتَحَ النِّسَاء ثُمَّ افْتَتَحَ آلَ عِمْرَانِ. Then he started Surah Nisa, he read the whole Surah Nisa. Then he started Surah Al Imran, he read the whole Al Imran. In other words, 5 paras. 5 juz of the Quran in one rakat of tahajjud salah. And not reading like how some of our imams read in Taraweeh in Ramadan, like what they call them bullet trains. No. Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam was reading mutarassilan. Comes in the riwayat, mutarassilan. Slowly, pausing, pondering over what he was reading. إِذَا مَرَّ بِآيَةٍ فِيهَا تَسْبِيحٌ سَبَّحَ وَإِذَا مَرَّ بِتَعَوُّذٍ تَعَوَّذَ. When he passed by an ayat in which Allah was praised, he praised Allah. When he passed by an ayat of Jannat, he asked for Jannat. When he passed by an ayat of Jahannam, he sought protection from Jahannam. Like that, 5 juz of the Quran in one rakat of tahajjud salah. Then he says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went into ruku'. فَكَانَ رُكُوعُهُ نَحْوًا مِنْ قِيَامِهِ. Started saying, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. He says the length of the ruku' was equivalent to the qiyam. Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd. The qawma was equivalent to the ruku'. The sajda was equivalent to the qawma. Quran tells us, Inna rabbaka ya'lam annaka taqumu adana min thuluthay al-layl wa nisfa wa thulutha wa ta'ifatun min alladhina ma'ak. Mafhum of the verse, Allah attests to the tahajjud salah of Rasul Pak sallallahu alaihi wasallam that at times, if you contextualize it, Quran is telling us the tahajjud salah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be 6 hours, sometimes 7 hours long. But the point here, my respected brothers, we are encouraged to lengthen our salah, but when we talk of individual salah, infiradi salah, when you are reading on your own, make as long salah as possible. Not just the qiyam, the ruku. When you make ruku, particularly our brothers that go out in Jamaat, make mashq, develop concentration in your salah. Spend time in your salah. When you go into ruku, the person looking at you must think you're not going to wake up from that ruku. When you go into sajda, the person must think that you're not going to wake up from that sajda. Beautify that salah. Develop concentration in the salah. But that, as we mentioned, is greatly encouraged, but that is infiradi salah, when you are reading on your own. When it comes to imamat, when you are an imam, one is, the imam is the leader of the community. And the imam, we are encouraged, we have to be careful about the selection of the imam. Who is the imam? أَقْرَأُهُمْ لِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ. Comes in the riwayat that you must select someone who is the most knowledgeable amongst you when it comes to the Quran. So, imamat is a trust. Imamat is a great responsibility. And not just anyone should be made an imam. Why? Because he is basically representing the rest of that congregation in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's court. We find in the riwayat, Al-Imamu Dhamin. Al-Imamu Dhamin. In other words, for the acceptance of the salah on behalf of that congregation, that imam is responsible. Carries a great role, a great responsibility. So, when a person is an imam, if we look at this hadith and the complaint that was made, we learn from this that he has to become cognizant and aware of who his congregation is. We find in the latter part of the hadith, Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentions, فَإِنَّ مِنْ وَرَائِهِ الْكَبِيرِ وَالصَّغِيرِ وَذَا الْحَاجَةِ. A congregation is made up of different types of people. The three categories specifically that Nabi Pak sallallahu alayhi wasallam draws our attention to, he says that in a congregation there are some old people. Old people, ulama ikram mentioned, why did Nabi Pak sallallahu alayhi wasallam mention? Obviously because of weakness, physical weakness. So they are not able to stand for very long. Then the second category which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions is Saghir. Saghir, in other words, young. Youngsters also make up part of a congregation. Youngsters, ulama ikram mention, they generally by nature will lack patience and concentration. So if the imam has to inordinately lengthen the salah, then what will happen is those youngsters obviously are going to become edgy. They, by nature of youth, they lack the patience. So cognizance is taken of them. Allah's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically mentions, there are young people behind you. They are very old and weak, infirm, sick, elderly behind you. Also, dhal haja. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there are people in that congregation who will have some needs. And because they've got needs, maybe a person has to get to work, or he's got some responsibility to discharge. If the salah is going to be too long, then what is going to happen is that person is going to lose concentration. Why? Because his focus is somewhere else. He needs to be somewhere, he needs to go somewhere. So the point we are getting at, my respected brothers, is that after Iman, the most important and greatest responsibility of Sharia is Salah. We are supposed to beautify, perfect, and even lengthen our Salah. But when it comes to congregational Salah, they take cognizance, be careful. Here, Sharia does not encourage you to inordinately lengthen that Salah. Discharge the Salah, yes. Sunnats, whether in Qiyam, whether in Ruku, whether in Sajda, at no cost should be compromised. The Sunnat should be discharged. But do not inordinately lengthen the Salah. We've run out of time. We're not going to go into the translation of the latter part of the hadith. Unfortunately, tomorrow I'm going on Safar, so there'll be further delay, but we will discuss the latter part later. What is very important for us to bear in mind is that don't take such ahadith out of context. Sometimes here, Sahabi says, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam became very angry. Why? The Imam was lengthening the Salah. Normally if you look at this, place your hand on the second part of the hadith. Person comes and he is telling Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, Ya Rasulullah, I don't go for the Fajr Salah with Jamaat. I miss the Fajr Salah with Jamaat because that Imam reads too long. According to our understanding of deen, what it would have been, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would have got angry at him. What is wrong with you? How can you give up your Fajr Salah with Jamaat? That is what we would expect. Yet, Allah's Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam becomes, Sahabi says, I never saw him as angry as I saw him on that day. And anger at who? Anger at that Imam. Why? Because he is not taking cognizance of who is part of his congregation. More important, what is the deeper lesson, the deeper sabaq, is that because of that, Shariat has given you an option. You don't have to read too long. Especially when it is congregational, you have a choice about the length of the salah. If you are lengthening that salah to such a way that you are causing people not to practice on Shariat and deen, this is what we call tanfir, where you are becoming mutanaffir. You are distancing people from deen by making deen too difficult. Ad-deenu yusrun. Bismillah said, deen is easy. Yuridullahu bikumul yusr, wala yuridu bikumul usr. Allah wants ease for you. Allah doesn't want difficulty for you. So where there is levity, where there is room to make things easy for people, don't make it difficult. Even if it is fard salah, don't make it difficult. by unnecessarily protracting it, making it too long. How long should it be? That inshallah, discussion will continue later. Subhanallah.